Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the fire dragon of change in Avtar? Part 3. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. 4 days have passed since the royal sloop had left port near Amashu, with it having made its way to Pohui stronghold in the Western Earth Kingdom, where the legendary Iron archers resided. The ship having arrived and dropped anchor just outside the fortress, with Naruto having left to meet with Colonel Shinu. While back on the ship, Mai sat on the steps of the top deck, watching her brother crawl around and play with his toys. Having brought his favorites with them from Amashu and managed to get a few new ones whenever they found a place to dock. Something she was thankful for as she saw TomTom start to act like how he always did before the battle. Though the knife thrower could still see an underlying sadness in him, even looking around occasionally as if looking for their parents before remembering they're gone. I can at least make sure he'll still know and remember them, thought Mai, planning to tell TomTom everything about their parents when he's older, making sure he would at least know them and hold on to the memories he still has. Before she saw Azula and Ty Lee walk up behind her and sat down beside her, the Kai blocker smiling at her while the fire princess nodded. Hey Mai. How are you? Ty Lee asked hesitantly, with Mai giving a shrug in response. And better, I'll be even better as we put more distance in between us and that pile of rocks. Replied Mai, hoping to never see Amashu again. I also sent letters to mine and TomTom's aunt and uncle, letting them know what happened and that we're okay. They sent their condolences and that we were always welcome to stay with them whenever we're ready. Mai added, having wanted to make sure they knew that she and her brother were safe, not wanting them to think they were dead as well. That's good and we're always here if you ever need anything. Said Ty Lee, putting a hand on her shoulder as the knife thrower nodded before smiling slightly as her brother came up to her with a piece of paper as ink stained his face, hands and clothes. With TomTom holding the paper out to his sister, which she took and saw it was a painting of them and their parents. Her smile growing slightly at seeing her drawing self looked more angry than bored and held several knives in her hands, though they looked more like flames than knives. Good job, just keep at it a little more. Mai said while patting TomTom on the head, making him smile before going back over to his toys. I was unaware you were a firebender, Mai. You haven't been keeping any other secrets have you? Azula asked with a smirk as she looked at the drawing, making Mai roll her eyes. Yeah, I'm really a snail sloth in disguise that's also capable of firebending. Said Mai, with Ty Lee gasping and looking at her with wide eyes. I knew it. That's why you're always so grumpy and your aura is gray, you're upset that everything is moving so fast and you're so slow. Ty Lee said with a teasing smile. Yep, you really figured it out. Whatever will I do with my secret exposed? Mai said, feigning worry at her secret being revealed. Don't worry Mai, we still care about you, no matter how slow you are. Azula assured before the trio laughed after a moment, making TomTom laugh as well, despite not knowing what they were laughing about. Thanks. I actually needed that. Mai said, enjoying the moment and teasing from her friends. No problem, I'm just glad to see you actually can laugh at something. Ty Lee said teasingly, with Mai rolling her eyes again. Yes. But perhaps we could also try being more honest as well with each other. Azula said hesitantly, getting Ty Lee and Mai to look at her. Honest about what, Azula? Questioned Ty Lee, wondering what she wanted them to be honest about. About each other. That we aren't really friends. Azula said while looking away, with the acrobat and knife thrower looking at her in surprise. What are you talking about? We are friends, we have been since we were little. Ty Lee said, Mai nodding in agreement. Yeah, we've known each other for years, we even agreed to help you hunt down the Avtar. That's not exactly something someone would do if they weren't friends. Added Mai, feeling her anger spike at mentioning the Avtar. Perhaps, but can we please just be honest? You two are friends with each other, you care about each other, and you can say we're friends as well, but it's only because you're afraid of me. I was the princess of the Fire Nation, not someone you could really say no to, and I was mean to both of you. I was jealous that you were always better than me at gymnastics Ty Lee, and I pushed you around for it. Well I made fun of you for liking Zuzu and the time I made you both fall into a fountain, Mai. Just be honest, please. Azula asked, still not looking at them. While Mai and Ty Lee were further shocked at her admittance before looking at each other, the brunette looking unsure. And the Ravenette feeling unsure as well, but also feeling a chance to let out a lot of her feelings regarding the Fire Princess. You want honesty? Okay. You were a terrible friend, you manipulated us, pushed us around whenever we did something better than you at anything. There was also that time you made us steal the mochi that my mother made for my grandmother, something that gave me nightmares about the Kamurika coming after me. Truthfully, I was always disgusted by how you disregarded others as nothing but pawns or playthings to torment. You being mean is being extremely mild with how you treated us. said Mai with a frown, but also feeling relieved to get all of that out in the open, while Azula wrapped her arms around her legs tightly as Ty Lee bit her lip. You were pretty mean, Azula, but I do consider you a friend as much as Mai. Ty Lee said, admitting that the Ravenette had been a bad friend and that she'd started being scared of her. Azula let out a shaky breath at their words, knowing she couldn't deny anything they said as it was all true. But it still hurt to hear from them, having always believed she was a good friend, just not in the conventional sense, but in the way she believed what being a friend was like. Thank you for being honest. And while I know I never really showed it, I did genuinely care about both of you and considered you my closest friends, my only friends really. Even if you were scared of me, you still stayed around, played with me, talked with me, and I really enjoyed those times. It felt nice being able to act like anyone else, even with you both knowing who I was and how I always acted. And it probably doesn't mean much, but I'm sorry for how I treated you both and not being a better friend. Azula said before looking back at them, with Ty Lee and Mai looking at her with wide eyes, not believing what they were actually hearing. Ty Lee, I very much did enjoy the show you put on at the circus, it was amazing, and something I know only you could pull off so effortlessly, as well as something you do for someone you care about, even if it's me. Mai, I'm truly sorry for trying to go back on the deal to get your brother back and for everything that happened during the battle. And I want to thank you both, that despite how I've acted and treated you, you've still stuck by me even if it's out of fear, it means a lot. Said Azula, taking a deep breath before exhaling. And if you both are willing, I would like to start over to really be friends. No fear, no manipulation, just real friends. Azula said hesitantly, while Mai and Ty Lee still looked at her in disbelief and shock. What exactly brought this on? Mai asked, unable to help but feel skeptical and suspicious at Azula's strange behavior. I've just had a lot to think about recently. And I want to try being a better friend, a real friend to both of you, after everything you've both done for me. So could we? Said Azula, having been thinking over everything that's happened and everything Naruto's told her, making her want to try and change. Before she was surprised when Ty Lee smiled brightly and flipped over her and Mai, landing on the Fire Princess's other side. Of course we can. I already said I cared about as much as Mai, and I knew you loved my show. And I promise the next one I give you will be so much better. Ty Lee said happily as she hugged Azula, touched at hearing how much she cared about them and wanted to start over. Well, this is something I never could have even dreamed about, so it has to be real. Mai stated with a faint smirk before wrapping her arm around Azula's shoulder. Just don't start going too soft on us, I think the idea of you being nice is honestly more terrifying than you are now. Mai added, willing to start over as well and see how Azula wants to start being a real friend. Azula looked at them in surprise, having actually not expected them to be willing to give her another chance, but was also thankful they did. Thank you both of you, it really means a lot. Azula replied with a small smile before she narrowed her eyes at them. But I swear, if you tell anyone about this, I'll have you both thrown into the sea with metal shoes. Threatened Azula, making Ty Lee and Mai smile and laugh slightly. That's the Azula we know and love. Said Ty Lee, only for them to immediately stop laughing when they looked at TomTom, only to see he was missing. TomTom? Mai said, shooting up and looked around for her brother, freaking out when she couldn't see him anywhere. The knife thrower began running around the deck of the ship, looking for her brother as she looked for any sign of him or hearing where he could be. Only to not see him anywhere, making her panic only grow before she ran to the sides of the ship, mentally pleading that he didn't try climbing over the sides and fell into the water. Feeling slight relief at not seeing any sign of anything having fallen into the water, but still panicked that he wasn't on the ship. Mai, hey. Relax, I'm sure he couldn't, Ty Lee said to try and get her friend to calm down. Don't you dare tell me to relax when my little brother is missing again. Shouted Mai, making the acrobat flinch in surprise, while Mai ran past her towards the gangplank, running down it towards the guards. Did you see a 2-year-old go past you? Mai demanded, surprising the guards at her appearance and question. The 2-year-old? Asked one of the guards, making Mai scowl and nearly reach for her knives. Did you not see a toddler come down here? Mai questioned again, with the guards quickly shaking their heads. No, we haven't seen anyone leave the ship. The second guard replied, with the knife thrower glaring at them before turning back to the ship, only to see Azula and Ty Lee. Mai, enough. Panicking won't solve anything, you need to relax and just calm down, alright? Said Azula, knowing that freaking out won't help. Yeah, just relax and think for a moment. He couldn't have gotten far, nor could he have gotten off the ship without being spotted. So he should still be here, if we split up we'll have a better chance at finding him. And we will find him. Ty Lee assured, causing Mai to stop for a moment, taking a few deep breaths before nodding. Right, okay. Let's see where he got off to. Mai said before the three girls quickly split up and began searching the entire ship to see where TomTom could have gone. But Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto was meeting with Colonel Shinu, the two watching as the Yain archers practiced in the archery range down below. Seeing every arrow hit the bullseye and every following arrow splitting the prior one from before down the middle. I've only heard about the Yain archer's skills, but seeing it firsthand, I believe anything I've heard is an understatement. You've certainly done an amazing job with their training, Colonel, said Naruto while nodding at Shinu, amazed at the skill the Yain archers had, knowing they've definitely earned their reputation of being the Fire Nation's secret weapons. Thank you, General Naruto, I make it my personal mission to ensure everything said about the Yain archers is true and proven. Unfortunately, some have begun to doubt them after the incident with the Avatar and the Blue Spirit escaping. Shinu replied, scowling in annoyance at how Zhao took control of the archers, only to make them look like fools when the Avatar and Blue Spirit escaped the stronghold. Anyone who doubts the Yain archers' abilities are fools. The fact remains that they alone are the only ones who have actually succeeded in defeating and capturing the Avatar. And I'm sure they'll be able to do so again. Naruto stated, with Shinu nodding in agreement, not minding that the High General requesting the use of the Yain archers. Of course, you have my word they will not fail. And I've already assembled the team you requested, 9 of the best Yain archers, led by the 3 whose skills are unrivaled, said Shinu before motioning Naruto to follow him, with a whiskered firebender doing so. Following the colonel down into a large courtyard, Naruto looking around in surprise at seeing a much more complex archery range, one that looked like it had been converted into a massive obstacle course. While seeing 9 Yain archers running around, dodging obstacles, jumping over pits, scaling walls, and shooting moving targets, while some of them didn't even need to look at the targets as they fired arrows. These 9 are some of the best archers you'll see, having pushed themselves harder than any others, training themselves to track, locate, hunt, and capture or kill their targets. They can shoot a moving target 1,000 yards away through even the densest jungles and vanish just as quickly. And those 3 over there, they're unlike anything you'll ever see, Shinu said, motioning to 3 of the archers, with Naruto looking over at them. Seeing that one was a 17-year-old boy with fair skin, long brown hair and wearing a sleeveless dark black bodysuit with pieces of dark red leather armor on his legs, chest and back, while a quiver of arrows was strapped to his back. While the other 2 were both girls, one being 15 years old and the other being 17 as well. The first girl also had fair skin and long brown hair, with a strand hanging between her eyes, and wearing a sleeveless black and dark purple uniform, while her own quiver was strapped horizontally across her lower back. And the second girl had fair skin, dark brown hair held in 2 buns and brown eyes, while wearing a black suit with gold edging, a hood, armor on her arms and legs, and 2 quivers strapped on her back. As well as numerous weapons strapped to her uniform, such throwing knives, shuriken, stilettos and even a sword beneath her quivers. Naruto looked on in amazement as the boy stood in the middle of several pendulum blades swinging around him, while dozens of targets swung back and forth around as well. With the boy moving around the blades without hesitation and shooting arrow after arrow at all the targets, without even looking at a single one, with each arrow hitting the center of each target. Before then drawing 4 arrows and aiming them into the air, releasing one after the other, each one flying up into the air and then descending where they hit 4 switches around him, causing the blades to stop moving. While the younger girl was actually hanging upside down, aiming 3 arrows at a spinning wheel filled with targets blocked by numerous moving obstacles. The girl released all 3 arrows at once, with all 3 being embedded in 3 different targets. Repeating this until all the targets had an arrow in them, before doing it again and splitting all the first arrows down the center. While the final girl was standing on top of a platform that was spinning around before several targets were thrown into the air around her. As she was seen aiming her bow at them before rapidly drawing and shooting arrows, hitting each target before any of them could even begin their descent. Followed by her then taking out multiple shuriken and threw them through the air, slicing each target in half as they fell. That's unreal, honestly. Were any of them among the archers sent after the Avatar? Naruto asked, only for Shinu to scoff. No, they were off on another assignment, thankfully. I wasn't going to let Admiral Zhao get his hands on the best Yain archers in the world, not for his personal vanity project. You on the other hand, have been ordered to hunt down the Avatar and now have a legitimate feud with him, rather than doing it for personal glory, replied Shinu, with Naruto nodding in response. True and understandable. But after having some time to clear our heads and think rationally after the tragedy at Amashu, it's safe to say the Avatar wasn't involved in Young's treachery. But I also can't forgive the Avatar for not doing more to stop him, despite Young clearly being in the wrong and the one who instigated the conflict. The fact that if it had been the Fire Nation who instigated the double cross, they would have fought tooth and nail against us, Naruto said, disgusted at the hypocrisy and bias the Avatar and his friends had shown, even if it had been subconscious on their part. As even if they were enemies, Naruto saw everyone as equals, regardless of rank, status, which nation they hailed from, or if they were bender or non-bender. If you don't mind me asking, General, what was done with them? were they sent to a rig out at sea? Shinu asked, knowing that's what's usually done with earthbenders, being sent to a rig in the sea where they can't bend and are put to work. No, they not only broke a deal, but also got good men and women killed, as well as getting their own king killed. They were given a punishment that fit their crimes, execution. Said Naruto, remembering how Young and his men had been executed. Flashback. Naruto looked at Young and the members of his resistance, all of them bound in chains in a way that kept them from being able to earthbend. Along with them being forced onto their knees on a wooden stage in front of all the citizens of Amashu. Captain Young, you and your men stand accused of treason, the murder of Governor Yukano and his wife Michi, the murder of King Bumi, as well as betrayal. The punishment for your crimes is execution. If you have any last words, speak now. Said Naruto, looking at the former captain blankly, with Young having his head bowed low before lifting it up to look at the crowd. Everything we did, what I did, it had only ever been for the good of Amashu. I didn't mean for King Bumi to die, nor did I wish it. I'm sorry. Young said, wanting to at least let the people of Amashu know he didn't mean for this to happen, only for the crowd to glare at him and his men, booing as them loudly. Justice for King Bumi. Death to the traitors. Betrayers. King killers. Murderers. Hearing the shouts made Young and his men lower their heads, seeing that people they fought for had fully turned against them. Normally, execution within the Fire Nation is death by fire. But given the nature of your crimes, there's someone else who will be carrying out your sentence. Said Naruto before stepping aside as Mai walked up onto the stage, glaring at the resistance members hatefully. You know, the funny thing is, I don't like needlessly killing. I think it's wasteful, pointless, and just unnecessarily cruel. It's why I prefer incapacitating enemies than simply going for an easy kill, only really aiming to injure or kill when I'm upset. And you helped orchestrate my parents' death, taking them away from me and my baby brother. Said Mai, walking down the line of prisoners until she reached the end, before slipping a knife into her hand. So, you'll understand if I enjoy this far more than I should. Mai stated before immediately turning and threw her knife, the blade flying through the air and slicing all their throats open. Cutting deep enough that they bled out within seconds before falling over dead, with Naruto catching the now blood-stained knife once it was close enough. Going over to Mai, the blonde firebender held out the knife for her, with Mai taking it only to throw it off into the distance. I don't want any reminders of the city. Said Mai, with Naruto nodding before motioning the guards to take the bodies away. Then flashback. Good riddance, then. If they can't be trusted to keep their word, then they aren't even worth being put to work. Shinu said, having no tolerance for betrayal or treachery of any kind, with Naruto nodding in agreement. So the leaders of this team, what are their names? Naruto asked, wanting to know the leaders since he'd likely be interacting with them often. The boy is Niji Hyuga, the younger girl is his cousin Hanabi Hyuga, while the older one is Tenten. Replied Shinu. The high general nodded again before he looked at Niji and Hanabi, his eyes widening slightly when he noticed something else about them. Their eyes were completely white with a lavender tint to them. Niji and Hanabi, are they? Said Naruto, not wanting to make any assumptions. Blind? Yes, they are. But don't let that fool you, they've proven time and time again that they don't need eyesight in order to hit their target. In fact, I'd say it makes them even better as all they need is to hear or feel where their target is and arrows will be flying in seconds. Shinu said, having had his doubts about letting them join the Yain archers, but after getting a demonstration of what they could already do, he had them begin training immediately afterwards. I don't doubt it. Naruto stated, given what he just saw them do, he wasn't going to assume either of them would be any less dangerous. Line up. Shinu yelled, getting all the Yain archers to immediately stop their training, jumping back to the ground if they weren't already there before getting into a single line, with Niji, Hanabi and Tenten standing in front of them. General Naruto, it's an honor to meet you, sir. Said Niji as they all gave a bow, which Naruto turned. The honor is mine, especially after the displays I saw you all put on, you all certainly surpassed the legends of the Yain archers. Though are you aware of what your mission will be while under me? Naruto asked, with all the archers nodding in response. We're to assist you in hunting down and capturing the Avtar. Seems easy enough, he was already taken down and captured by Yain archers before. This time he won't be escaping. Replied Tenten, confident they'll be able to capture the Avtar again. I'm sure you all are more than capable, but I want you all to be aware of the danger. You all may have heard of the battle at Amashu, resulting in the deaths of Governor Yukano, his wife, King Bumi, and many others. What I don't think you've heard is near the end, the Avtar entered the Avtar state, and for the short time in it, he displayed enough power that if he hadn't been rendered unconscious, I have no doubt he would have destroyed Amashu entirely. The Avtar may be a child, but make no mistake, he is still the most powerful bender in the world, as well as an airbending master, he is not to be underestimated. Which is why, while I know you all are very skilled, you will continue training under my command as well as learning Kai blocking, allowing us to be able to fight in close quarters and take away a bender's bending. As I have doubt it will just be the Avatar we will need to face, but others as well, and I intend to make sure all of us are prepared for anything. If any of you have any doubts about accepting this mission, back out now and know it will not be held against you. There's no shame in refusing to risk your own life," said Naruto, wanting to give them all a chance to back out and letting them know the full extent of what they'll be doing and what he's expecting of them. But none of the Yain archers looking unsure or hesitating, all of them remaining determined and ready to fulfill their mission. "Don't expect us to run away like scared children, any mission we receive we fulfill, no matter what it is," Hanabi said while looking directly at Naruto, despite not actually seeing him, making the whiskered firebender nod. "Then I look forward to seeing you all perform in the field," Naruto stated before bowing to Shinu, who returned it. "Colonel, I'll be sure to bring all the archers back once our mission is completed. Good luck with the training and holding the stronghold," said Naruto, with Shinu nodding in response. "You have my thanks General and best of luck on your mission. And congratulations on your engagement to Princess Azula," Shinu replied, with Naruto nodding before he and the Yain archers took their leave to return to the royal sloop. With Azula back on the ship, Azula had begun searching the lower levels of the royal sloop for TomTom, soon finding herself in the prison cells, stopping when she heard her uncle talking to someone. "And the White Lotus tile is perhaps one of the most important pieces in the game, a set is never complete without one," Iroh said, making Azula narrow her eyes at who he could be talking to. Assuming he may be conspiring with someone, Azula moved quietly to see who he was talking to, only for her eyes to widen at seeing TomTom sitting in front of Iroh's cell. With the Dragon of the West having a large pie show table in front of him. As while he was a prisoner, Naruto had also pulled a few strings to make things more comfortable for Iroh. Like having an actual bed, regular meals and tea, as well as a pie show table and set of tiles. Relaxing at having found TomTom and seeing her uncle wasn't conspiring with anyone, Azula stepped forward, getting Iroh's attention. "Ah, Azula. Nice of you to visit again, I was just explaining to this young one the rules of pie show," Iroh said while smiling at TomTom, who reached through the bars to try and take one of the tiles. "You realize you're trying to explain the rules of a complicated board game that involves strategy and quick thinking to a 2-year-old. One, who I believe, seems more interested in trying to eat the tiles than what they mean," stated Azula while looking at him with a raised brow. "Perhaps, but I believe it's never too early or too late for one to learn new skills. Maybe you would be interested in playing a game," said Iroh, making Azula scoff as she moved to pick up TomTom to take him back to Mai. "I don't have time to waste on games when I'm busy hunting the Avatar," Azula retorted, with Iroh nodding slightly. "Of course. And I've heard about what's happened at Amashu, please pass on my condolences to Mai, it's never easy losing someone you care about, especially a family member," Iroh said before gaining a far-off look in his eyes, while Azula stopped before she could grab TomTom. Remembering the battle at Amashu, the fighting, the destruction, the death, the Fire Princess was still reeling from everything she saw. And seeing firsthand the power the Avatar possessed over just one element, not wanting to imagine him mastering all four. Before looking at her uncle, knowing he has far more experience on the battlefield. What was it like for you at Ba Sing Se?" questioned Azula, wanting to know what it had been like for Iroh during his siege. But the former general now having a haunted look in his eyes, while memories of the siege began returning to him. Hammering away at the outer wall with trebuchets, the earthbenders launching dozens of rocks at them without pause, those that had been crushed and injured by their impact. Before finally gaining a foothold after bringing the wall down, but by then his forces were tired, weary, and wanted to stop, but couldn't, not with how far they've gotten. Until the news came to him of Lu Ten being mortally wounded during the battle, but by the time he learned of it, his son was already dead. Remembering how he rushed to where he was, wanting to at least be with his son in his final moments, only to be too late. Arriving only to see his body being prepared to be returned to the Fire Nation for a burial. But that having been the moment when he finally looked around and saw that there would be no end for the siege. It would continue, no matter what they did, no matter how many losses either side suffered, it would never end. That had put an end to any desire Iroh had for battle or glory, all he wanted was to return home with his men, none of whom wanted to continue fighting either after all the losses they already suffered. And while many saw him as a coward, a failure, and weak for letting his emotions interfere with the outcome, he still remembered the relief in the eyes of those who served under him. All of them relieved that they could finally go home rather than throwing their lives away in a siege that wouldn't end. Then learning how his father suddenly died, Iroh lost any desire to even try and fight Ozai for the throne, no longer caring for power or status anymore. But the memories stayed with him, they were things that Iroh would never be able to forget. Uncle Azula called out, looking at him in annoyance at how he's just sat there without saying anything, with Iroh being pulled from his thoughts and memories. It was dark. Even during the day, the sky was covered by an endless sea of smoke and fire. Most of the siege had been spent breaking through the outer wall. I lost count of how men and women I lost during that time, until we finally broke through and gained a foothold, but then I learned your cousin had been mortally wounded. But, by the time I found out he was gone. That's when I learned the siege never would have ended. We could continue hammering away at their walls, but they would keep fighting. It would only lead to more death, more destruction, more violence, and my men were tired and weary, their morale was wavering, and all of us we merely wished to see home again. Said Iroh, looking down, while Azula looked at him with wide eyes, having never actually thought of how Liu Ten died or how he learned about it. It wasn't anywhere as bad at Amashu, but it was still like nothing I've heard. It wasn't glorious, there was no honor, it was just survive or die. Even if we won in the end, so many still died that it didn't even feel like a victory. Azula said, leaning back against the wall before sliding down it. Yes, I have had my share of victories in battle, only for them to still feel empty when you see the cost they came at. But I never really saw it, believing those that died did so to help win the war. It was only after Ba Sing Se that I truly saw the cost of battle. Iroh stated, thinking of the hollow victories he had won. But it also helped me learn and grow as well. I used to think that failures were a shame that could never be wiped away, something that you would never be able to forget, no matter how much you wished to. Only now, I see that failures are not something to be ashamed of, they are merely another opportunity to begin again, this time more wisely. I was able to grow from my experiences and believe I have grown to be a better person. It's something I believe you can do as well, Azula. You may have failed, but they are your chances to try again, and eventually you will find your way to molding your own destiny. Said Iroh, with Azula looking away before glancing at him. And what if I've already run out of chances? Azula asked lowly. Then keep believing in yourself and hope that you still have a chance to be better. But a little help from others can be a great blessing as well, such as your friends and future husband. Iroh replied, making the Ravenet turn back to him, seeming to contemplate his words before standing up and picking up TomTom. I suppose you can say something wise every now and again. It's only a shame you chose to be an old pervert to June, rather than a wise old man. Azula stated, causing Iroh falter and look embarrassed at his past attempt to flirt with June and pretend to be paralyzed. Yes, well I simply see the beauty in everything, even one as dangerous as June, and merely wished for her to know there are those who appreciate her beauty. Which I will not be doing from in here, thankfully. Said Iroh sheepishly, muttering the last part to himself with a shudder. Even that June had come here to give him a piece of her mind while pelting him with Shirshu spit darts and leaving him paralyzed, it made Iroh thankful he was locked away. Not doubting she would have done a lot more than yell at him and leave him temporarily paralyzed if she could actually reach him. With Azula looking away in annoyance, but having a small smile on her face while trying not to laugh, before covering it up as a smirk. Well, I better be getting this child back to Maya before she tears the ship apart searching for him. Perhaps I'll visit again whenever I need to annoy someone. Azula said before taking her leave with TomTom. I will look forward to when you visit again, and the offer stands for a game of pie show. Said Iroh, before watching his niece leave. Once she was gone, Iroh looked up at the ceiling with a frown on his face, thinking over what's happened to Amashu. The Avatar may not know it, but he has lost the respect of several members of the White Lotus with King Bumi's death. Thought Iroh, saddened at having learned of Bumi's death. While knowing several members of the White Lotus wouldn't take too kindly to the loss of one of their oldest and wisest, if not most eccentric, members. But perhaps it is time that we also stop being so reliant on the Avatar as well. Iroh thought, remembering a conversation he once had with Naruto on the subject during his brief time with him and Zuko. Flashback. Any luck in locating the Avatar yet? Naruto asked as he and Iroh sat across from each other, playing a game of pie show. Unfortunately, no, we have traveled to many locations where the Avatar could be hiding or where he could have spent time to master his bending. But I fear that my brother has only sent Prince Zuko on a futile mission, finding someone that may have long since passed and been reincarnated as a waterbender. Though he is convinced the Avatar is still out there, hiding away for the moment to strike. Replied Iroh while shaking his head sadly, believing this was a fool's errand and simply a way for Ozai to get rid of Zuko without actually killing him. Perhaps it'd be better if the Avatar didn't return. Stated Naruto, making Iroh look up at him with a frown. You believe the world is better off without the Avatar? Questioned Iroh, only for Naruto to shake his head. You misunderstand General Iroh, I respect the Avatar and their duty to keeping balance in the physical world and spirit world. But I don't believe they should be the one to solve all the world's problems, only intervening when they are truly needed. And when they do, they must never doubt their decisions and go through with everything they intend to accomplish. The Avatar believes the four nations should remain separated, believing it keeps everything balanced, but that also prevents them from growing. You've heard of Udao, right? Naruto asked, confusing the Dragon of the West for a moment before nodding. Of course, one of the first colonies created, and they make the finest metal in the world. Iroh said, having even commissioned weapons and armor to be made there, back when he was still a general. I've been there a few times, it's an amazing city, having grown from a poor backwater city to having a thriving metalworking industry. And it was done by Fire Nation and Earth Kingdom citizens working together, combining their cultures to create something even better. Mayor Morishita has even married an earthbender, and they have a daughter, Kori Morishita, who's also an earthbender and a skilled one, the last time I saw her. Especially when she uses her spiked meteor hammer. That's something that could have never happened with the Avatar around, not being able to blend and mix the four nations together to create something new and even better, as well as everyone depending on them alone to solve their problems, rather than learning to solve them on their own. Explained Naruto, making Iroh gain a thoughtful look since he couldn't fault that thinking. Well, I can't truly fault such beliefs, but I believe no matter what the Avatar will always be needed. Stated Iroh, with the High General nodding in agreement. I do as well, but the Avatar needs to accept that things change, that they need to change if they're ever going to improve. And the rest of the world needs to accept the idea that there won't always be someone for them to run to for help, either. Said Naruto, with the Dragon of the West nodding as well, knowing that was true before he smirked at the blonde firebender. Now perhaps you can tell me about Mayor Morishita's daughter, who you seem to hold in such high regard. Not planning to settle down so soon, are you? Iroh asked, causing Naruto to blush lightly and give him an annoyed look. Just focus on the game, I don't want to beat you too quickly. Said Naruto, making Iroh laugh at how he didn't answer him. Then flashback. Perhaps it is time for the world to change. Thought Iroh, contemplating what will happen in the coming days. With Azula. Meanwhile, Azula was making her way back to Mai to return TomTom to her, though she was having a hard time paying attention as the toddler kept trying to grab her hair. Stop it. Azula said, grabbing TomTom's hand again as he tried pulling on her hair. Only for him to try again, this time trying to reach to pull at her hairpiece, making Azula hold him out while narrowing her eyes at him. Don't touch that either. Just try to behave yourself, little person. You can bother Mai and Ty Lee all you want once I find them. Said Azula, only for TomTom to try and reach towards her while cooing happily. Stop it. Stop doing whatever it is you're doing. Azula said, trying to remain indifferent and cold, but found it difficult, starting to think he actually looked cute and somehow happy with her. Just wait until we find Mai, so you can bother her instead. Said Azula as she kept walking while holding TomTom away from her, doing her best to not look at him, hoping they'll find Mai soon so she can take her brother back. Before her eyes widened when she heard TomTom start whimpering, making her look at him only to see tears in his eyes. No, 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 no. Don't even think about, said Azula, only to flinch when TomTom started crying loudly, making the Fire Princess panic. Alright, fine. Here, see, I'm holding you so you can stop crying. Azula said, knowing that Mai would kill her for making TomTom cry, before holding TomTom closer while hoping that'll get him to stop, only for it to not work. Okay, children enjoy stupid and foolish things, said Azula before looking around to make sure no one was around before looking back at TomTom and began making faces at him. See, it's funny because it's stupid, right? You can stop crying now. Said Azula, only to see that didn't work either, with her panic growing that nothing seemed to work. Before the Fire Princess stopped as she remembered something, one of the few good memories she had of her mother when she was still very young and actually received attention from her. Don't cry, little one. Azula said softly while wiping away TomTom's tears, making him stop for a moment and look at her. There's no need to cry anymore, nothing will be able to hurt you as long as I'm here, alright. As long as I'm here, you only need to laugh and smile, can you do that? Said Azula before poking TomTom lightly in the stomach, making the toddler giggle. See, isn't that much better? Always remember, as long as I'm around, you'll never have to cry again, do you know why? Because you are safe and you are loved, always. Never forget that. Azula said softly, not even noticing TomTom had stopped crying and was smiling again, along with grabbing a strand of her hair as well. With the Ravenet being too lost in thought to notice, not sure if she'd even remembered that, or if it was just something she imagined to make up for never having her mother's attention, like Zuko. You're really good at that. Naruto stated, snapping Azula from her thoughts as she looked at him with wide eyes, seeing the High General leaning against the wall and smiling at her. How long were you standing there? And when did you get back? Azula demanded, not wanting anyone to see her like this. Just a few minutes ago, along with a team of Yayan archers that'll be joining us. I ran into Ty Lee and learned TomTom wandered off, so I came to help search, but it seems that's no longer needed. said Naruto while walking up to them, patting TomTom on the head making the Tata look at him. And you did pretty good in getting him to settle down. Naruto added before Azula quickly handed TomTom to him and turned away. It was nothing. I was just saying nonsense, anything to get him to stop. Retorted Azula while crossing her arms before she heard TomTom giggling making her curious as she glanced back at them. Seeing Naruto smiling at the toddler and bouncing him lightly before creating several small flames that danced over TomTom's head, much to his amazement and fascination. The Fire Princess feeling herself turn full towards them, taking in the sight of Naruto holding the young child, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. It didn't sound like nothing or nonsense. Was that something your mother used to say to you? Asked Naruto, making Azula scowl. No. She was too busy focusing all her attention on Zuzu, the only attention she gave me was to scold me or send me to my room. She never loved for me, she never even cared for me, not that I cared for her, either. Zuzu could have all her attention for all I care, it would explain why he's so weak, too busy being coddled and sheltered. Azula said, acting like she didn't care what her mother did, not admitting how angry and hurt she really was. Only to suddenly feel Naruto take her hand in his, making Azula look at him to see he was looking at her now. It's alright if you want to be upset, Azula, you can try to hide it. But I can see it does hurt that your mother didn't give you as much attention as your brother. And that's normal, you should be hurt and you should express that, not keep it bottled up all the time. But after what I saw, maybe she did care about you in the beginning and you've just forgotten those moments, only remembering her scolding you and sending you to your room. Naruto said, making Azula frown and take her hand back. What would you know? You didn't know her and you barely know me. Besides, you don't even know what it's like to have a mother. Azula said, hoping that'll get him to leave her alone. You're right, I don't know what it's like and I don't know anything about Princess Ursa. But I have seen other families, how mothers take care of their children. I saw how Michi ran out into the middle of a battle to try and save TomTom. I've even seen regular civilians willing to give their lives to protect their children. While I don't personally know what it's like, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that one thing you can never doubt is a mother's love for her children and the lengths she'd go to keep them safe. And maybe your own mother simply saw how strong you already were and didn't think you'd need her anymore. Said Naruto, with Azula looking away from him. And I do want to get to know you better, Azula. To know more about who I'm going to marry so we can have an actual relationship. Naruto added, making the Ravenet glance at him. Why? Why do you care? Why do you want to know me? Azula muttered, not sure why he was trying to be nice with how she's treated him before and still did, occasionally. Because you deserve someone that cares about you and you deserve to be happy. Stated Naruto, causing Azula to look at him with wide eyes. By the way, with how you handled TomTom, I think you'll make an amazing mother yourself one day. Naruto said, smiling at the Fire Princess, making her blush and quickly look away again. Whatever. Ella, let's just go find Mai. Said Azula before quickly walking past Naruto, with the High General laughing slightly as he followed her. Though he was surprised a little when Azula slowed down to walk beside him and held his hand. I think you'd make a good parent as well. Azula said lowly without looking at him, making Naruto smile and squeezed her hand gently. Having left Poyui's stronghold and starting their way along the Earth Kingdom's coast, everyone could currently be found on the top deck the following day. With today being the first Kai blocking lesson that Ty Lee was going to be giving them. While Azula glanced around at the other soldiers, spotting Kurotsuchi, Chijai, Ino, and Haku, along with several other soldiers she's taken notice of. One was a fairly tall woman with fair skin, pupilless brown eyes, and green hair that she tied in a bun on top of her head, with a hair needle running through it, and one short and long strands of hair with orange tips, framing each side of her face. Along with being one of the few not wearing armor, instead wearing a sleeveless backless top, short tight pants, with 2 lapels on the front and the back, an obi around her waist, as well as purple arm warmers which extend up to her shoulders, bandages around her tights and ankles, and black sandals. Along with a black headband with the Fire Nation emblem on it. This was Pakura, a skilled firebender that Azula learned specialized in absorbing the heat out of objects and even people, as well as evaporating the moisture in their bodies. Another was a girl who has long reddish-brown hair, lightly tanned skin, and blue eyes. With her wearing a cyan blue guy with a cream-colored vest over it, blue shorts, dark arm and leg bands, and brown sandals. This was Amer, a waterbender and healer under Naruto, though she was capable at fighting, even incorporating the use of poisons in her bending, she preferred healing than fighting. The third soldier was a young man with pale skin, short, unkempt, black hair, black eyes and a relatively broad nose and well-defined eyelashes that returns upwards at each end. With him wearing the standard Fire Army armor. This was Shisui Uchiha, another skilled firebender and swordsman, along with having a more laid-back and humble attitude despite his talent. The fourth was a very tall, muscular young man with fair skin, spiky orange hair, and red-orange eyes. With him only wearing black pants and a long red cape with the Fire Nation emblem that covered his entire body. This was Go, an earthbender with an unusually calm disposition, though Azula's heard that he becomes an entirely different person in battle, turning into a complete monster when needed. Next were two non-benders Azula hadn't originally given much thought to, given they weren't benders until she heard more about them. The first being Kiba Inuzuka, who specialized in tracking targets along with utilizing metal claws on his gauntlets and boots. Even having metal fangs created to put in his mouth, allowing him to fight like a wild animal. And the second was Shikamaru Nara, who was possibly the laziest person Azula's ever seen, having seen him falling asleep during meetings and even laying around on the ship, simply staring up at the sky. The only reason she hasn't tried anything against him for such behavior was because he's under Naruto's command. And the fact that he's also apparently Naruto's top strategist, a claim she found skeptical until Naruto let her look over several plans Shikamaru had created. All of which detailing different potential scenarios that could happen during their mission. But Azula having looked them all over in disbelief, having sat with her father during a few war meeting, so she knew a little about the planning put into the moves and strategies the Fire Nation makes. But Shikamaru seemed to take it a step further and thought over every possible scenario that could happen and made a plan for it. Then made a backup plan in case it failed and another backup plan in case that one failed. Leaving the Fire Princess stunned that anyone could be that smart, but also left him be after seeing proof of his abilities. Though everyone's attention turned to the front of the ship when Ty Lee appeared flipping through the air past them, before landing in front of everyone with a bright smile on her face. "Hello everyone. My name's Ty Lee, and I'll be your Kai blocking instructor," Ty Lee said with a bow before standing up straight. Now then, for everyone who doesn't know, Kai blocking is an ancient technique that's practiced in secret, given how it can leave benders helpless by temporarily taking their bending. It's not something widely known by those who practice it. It focuses on delivering quick jabs and punches to opponents' pressure points, with them being fast enough to not give enemies a chance to dodge or retaliate. The strikes can be delivered with your fingers and knuckles, as well as pressing down hard enough, which requires a good amount of strength in your fingers to effectively Kai block your opponent. It's also possible to use your feet, but that requires good flexibility and accuracy, otherwise it'd just be a regular kick. Ty Lee explained while looking around at everyone to make sure they were paying attention. Though Kai blocking is able to block a bender's Kai and even leave them paralyzed, which also makes it effective against non-benders to paralyze their limbs. The attacks can also be light enough so they can still move but are unable to bend, while the strongest attacks will block their Kai, paralyze them, and leave them feel pain afterwards. However, while it's a useful skill, it's not perfect since if opponents are aware you can Kai block them, then they'll be able to anticipate it by adapting to avoid getting struck or make sure to keep you at a distance with their bending, if they have it. Strong enough armor also makes Kai blocking useless, since you'd be unable to hit their pressure points. So, if you're fighting an opponent that knows you can Kai block, you'll need to find a way to get in close enough to strike, as well as remove the armor they're wearing if they're wearing any. Said Ty Lee, wanting to make sure they knew the strengths and weaknesses of Kai blocking, so they didn't think it was all powerful or anything to use. Now then, I'll need a volunteer to give you all a demonstration of Kai blocking and where to strike your opponents. Ty Lee said, knowing she'd need someone to volunteer to help her demonstrate Kai blocking, at least until they got a proper training dummy to practice on. With no one looking eager at the chance to be Kai blocked, even if it's just a demonstration, none of them wanted to experience being cut off from their being or paralyzed. "I'll do it," Naruto said, stepping forward, much to the shocked Ty Lee, Mai and the Iron archers, while no one else looked surprised that he'd volunteered. He's not serious, is he?" Mai asked, looking at Azula, not believing he'd volunteer to be used to demonstrate Kai blocking. "Mai, I've only known him for a few days and talked with him even fewer times. And what I've seen so far, yes he's serious," replied Azula, not knowing much about Naruto, but from she's seen and learned ever since this mission began he would do something like this. Are you sure, Naruto? If you don't want to volunteer I'll understand," Ty Lee said, hesitant at the idea of Kai blocking the whiskered firebender, only for Naruto to smile reassuringly at her. "It's alright Ty Lee, really. But if it helps, you don't actually need to Kai block me outside of lessons where you need to. Besides, I trust you," said Naruto, surprising the brunette before she smiled and nodded. "Okay, if you're sure, and thank you Naruto. Though you'll actually need to take off your armor and shirt since I need to show where to accurately hit on the body," said Ty Lee while blushing lightly at needing him to take off his clothes. With Naruto being surprised at this before nodding as he began removing his armor, getting all the female soldiers to look at him eagerly, much to Azula's annoyance. "Remember who he's marrying," Azula said in annoyance at how they were looking at her fiancé. You aren't married yet, princess, and we aren't wasting the chance for a free show," replied June while looking at Naruto, eager to see him without most of his clothes, making the fire princess growl lowly. "Lighten up, sweetheart, and enjoy the view like the rest of us," Kurotsuchi added, grinning in excitement as Naruto took off his shirt, leaving him in just his pants and boots. "Anything else you need me to do?" Naruto asked, looking at Ty Lee, who was looking at him with wide eyes and a bright blush on her face. "Ooh," Ty Lee said, feeling her mind go blank for a moment as she only looked at his muscular body, torn between cursing Azula for being engaged to him and wanting to know if she'd be willing to share. "I'll show them how flexible I really am," thought Ty Lee with her eyes glazing over for a moment. "Ty Lee," said Azula, narrowing her eyes at her friend upon seeing how she's basically drooling over Naruto while snapping the Kai blocker out of her increasingly mature thoughts. Right. Th, that's perfect, Naruto. You just stand right there," said Ty Lee, embarrassed at her behavior and what she was thinking. "Now everyone pay close attention to see where to strike an opponent's pressure points, as you'll need to be extremely precise otherwise they won't work." And Ty Lee said, trailing off when she looked at Neji and Hanabi, remembering that they're blind and couldn't actually see. "Don't stop on our account, we'll be able to see everything just fine," said Hanabi, knowing Ty Lee stopped because of them. "While we can't see like the rest of you, we can hear and feel the vibrations around us, giving us a form of echolocation similar to bats, which also provides a view of our entire surroundings, rather than just what's in front of us. We'll be able to still see where to strike," Neji said, surprising and amazing several soldiers at how they could still see everything around them. "Oh, well, that's good. Alright then, once more pay attention to where I strike. And remember, be fast and precise," said Ty Lee before she began going through the motions of her Kai blocking, giving gentle taps to each of Naruto's pressure points, not hard enough to do anything, but enough to show where they were. With everyone working to mimic her movements, imagining someone standing in front of them to strike their pressure points. Azula and Mai having the easiest time copying the movements from all the time they've spent with Ty Lee, giving them a better understanding of Kai blocking. While the Yain archers were also starting to get the hang of it, given being quick and precise was part of their training, along with having perfect accuracy. "Think we'd be able to use Kai blocking with our bows and arrows if we strike an opponent's pressure points," Tenten said, looking at Neji and Hanabi, along with the other archers who had similar thoughts on if they'd be able to do such a thing. "It may be a possibility, but I'm unsure if our regular arrows would be able to work the same as a jab to a pressure point," replied Neji, with his cousin nodding in agreement. "Agreed. Though it may be possible if we used blunted arrows or different arrowheads to simply impact rather than pierce," Hanabi added, with the archers thinking it over along with the idea of using different kinds of arrows that could be used to Kai block opponents. Not a bad idea. Wonder if I could do the same with my whip," thought June, intrigued at the idea of using her whip to strike her opponents' pressure points to paralyze them, giving her another method of incapacitating and capturing targets. Mai also had similar thoughts about being able to use her knives to Kai block opponents, knowing she'd be able to hit their pressure points with her accuracy. "Let's see how dangerous you are without your bending and being full of knives," Mai thought darkly, imagining using such a method on the Avatar to leave him helpless and take her time getting revenge on him. After giving a few more demonstrations of where to strike, Ty Lee turned back to everyone, clapping her hands together with a smile. "Alright, I think that's enough of a demonstration, now to put it into practice. Everyone get into groups to practice Kai blocking each other. You're free to hold back from actually Kai blocking, but make sure you still try to use some strength," said Ty Lee, with everyone nodding as they got into groups. Later. Everyone continued practicing Kai blocking for a few hours, making good progress in learning the fighting style, with Neji and Hanabi also proving to have a talent for it. With the lesson soon coming to an end as everyone moved on to more independent training. "I gotta say, Aura girl, you certainly make for an effective teacher," June stated as she trained with Naruto, Azula, Ty Lee, and Mai, actually impressed with the acrobats lesson. "Hahaha, thanks. I was actually pretty nervous about teaching so many people, but I just pretended like it was another show I was putting on and it came naturally," replied Ty Lee with a smile, glad the first lesson went so well. "Well, if you keep at it like this, I'm sure you could start teaching your own classes of Kai blocking to have more people start learning it," Naruto said, knowing a lot of non-benders and even benders would want to learn Kai blocking with how useful it is, while Ty Lee looked at him in surprise. "You think I could teach classes?" Ty Lee asked, not sure what to think of that, since teaching soldiers Kai blocking was one thing, but actively teaching classes on it is another. "Yeah, I mean only if you wanted to. Since you are a really talented teacher, Ty Lee, so I'm sure you'd be great at showing and training others," replied Naruto, making Ty Lee smile. "Though if you don't mind me asking, where did you learn Kai blocking from anyway?" Naruto asked, curious about how Ty Lee learned Kai blocking since as far as he knew, there were no Kai blocking masters in the Fire Nation, knowing if there they'd have joined the military and taught the soldiers. I actually learned from some books my family owns, I'm part of one of the noble families and was one of 7 identical sisters, and I do mean identical. It made it difficult to stand out when you're part of a matching set, so we all decided to have a talent only we specialized in, and the others stayed away from it. I chose acrobatics. But I still felt like I was part of a matching set, always competing for attention and feeling neglected, so I also learned Kai blocking. Something none of my sisters knew, and it did help that I finally had something that was really my own, but not a lot. Said Ty Lee before looking down, having always hated being part of a matching set with her sisters, having the same hairstyle, the same clothes, the same everything, nothing that was really her own. Before she looked up and smiled at Azula and Mai. That is until I attended the Royal Fire Academy for Girls, where I got to meet Azula and Mai, and they only saw Ty Lee. They didn't see one part of a matching set, they only saw me, and I was so happy we became friends, because now I really had something that was my own and people that saw me for me. Ty Lee said while smiling at her friends. Please don't get all mushy on us, there's only so much sickening sweetness I can handle before throwing up. Mai said dully, though had a slight smile on her face. Yes, please don't. You were simply not as annoying as the rest of the annoying brats sent there, as well as having actual talent. Azula said while looking away to hide the small smile. I love you girls too. Ty Lee said happily. Well, even if you have 6 identical sisters Ty Lee, you definitely aren't part of a matching set. You're very unique from what I've seen, you care a lot about your friends, enough to leave your life at the circus behind. You don't hesitate to help them or jump to their defense, you're really strong and brave, and you're not afraid to be yourself. I don't think I'd have any problem picking you out of 1,000 identical sisters because there's only one Ty Lee. Naruto said, smiling at the acrobat, who looked at him in surprise before smiling brightly and hugged him tightly. You are so sweet, Azula's so lucky to get to marry you. Smart, kind, strong, and handsome. Ty Lee said with her tone turning flirtatious along with a matching smile, giggling when she heard the Fire Princess growl lowly and flipped away from the whiskered firebender. Ooh, thanks Ty Lee, and she's lucky to have you and Mai as friends. Speaking of which, where did you learn to use knives Mai? Were you taught by someone? Questioned Naruto, unsure if she'd be willing to talk about her life after what happened to her parents. No, I taught myself out of boredom. Mai replied, surprising Naruto at how she learned knife throwing. You taught yourself to throw knives out of boredom? Naruto said, with the ravenet nodding. I threw them at my bedroom wall to entertain myself and eventually got a lot better at it by learning to aim at more difficult targets and how to ricochet them off the walls. That part helped a lot as it let me just bounce them around my room and back into my hand, saving me the trouble of getting up to grab them. Said Mai, before flicking out one of her knives and throwing it on the ship deck, ricocheting off to hit the railing and flying straight into Mai's waiting hand. Wow, that's definitely impressive, you taught yourself all that without a teacher. But why though? Naruto asked, wondering why she'd choose to learn knife throwing out of boredom rather than something else. Well, I guess if we're sharing stories, I was a rich only child who got anything I wanted as long as I behaved and sat still, while not speaking unless spoken to. So I stayed the perfect little girl, did everything I was told and kept my thoughts and opinions to myself, never acting out or caring about expressing myself. But that eventually got boring, so I taught myself to use knives since they were interesting and helped me deal with the boredom. Then I attended the Royal Fire Academy for Girls, met these two, and I've had a headache ever since. Mai said boredly, though was noticeably tense when talking about her childhood since it made her think of her parents. Well, I'm sure we're all glad you chose learning to use knives as a hobby since it means you got to join us. Said Naruto while smiling at Mai, who merely shrugged before stumbling when Ty Lee wrapped an arm around her. Yeah. And we wouldn't have any other way, having you with us. Since now we have more opportunities to get you to smile. Said Ty Lee, making the knife thrower look at her annoyance, though not really as she patted the acrobat on the back. You're hurting my feelings Foxy. Focusing so much on them but you haven't asked me anything. June said in mock hurt, with Naruto rolling his eyes at her, having learned her games when they worked together before. How did you two meet anyway? Azula asked with narrowed eyes. I met June while on a mission to deal with some rebels, causing trouble with supply lines, using guerrilla tactics and earthbending, making it difficult to locate where they were hiding. So I hired June to help track them down. Replied Naruto, with the bounty hunter nodding with a smirk. It also helped they had some decent bounties on their head, so I'd be getting paid even more than usual, plus getting Foxy as company. Since most guys are either dumb enough to try flirting with me, ogling me, or run the moment they realize I can kick their asses. But Foxy here was the perfect gentleman, Nyla even took a liking to him. said June, while Naruto simply shrugged and nodded. You're the best bounty hunter I've ever met, so I was interested to learn more about you and how you became as skilled as you are. Naruto said honestly, having wanted to know how June got so skilled as a bounty hunter and mercenary. How did you become a bounty hunter? Questioned Ty Lee curiously. I was born into the profession and was trained by my dad, he was a bounty hunter too. We traveled all over the Earth Kingdom, helping me get familiar with the land and was taught how to track, fight and locate bounties. That's how I met Nyla, he was a reward from a rare animal collector after my dad completed a bounty for them and we've been together ever since. While making sure to become even better, once Nyla and I went out on our own. June said with a pleased smirk at her success as a bounty hunter mercenary. But I'll admit, it does get pretty boring when you're the best at what you do, that is until Foxy came along and helped spice things up. All the time you came knocking, it was always something new and interesting. And unlike the rest of my clients, he's not afraid getting his hands dirty, rather than leaving all the work to me, making it even more interesting. I even started being generous and offered a discount every now and then for my services. And of course my offer will be standing whenever you're ready, Foxy. June said slyly with a wink, making Naruto blush and look away. What offer? Azula demanded, feeling her annoyance and jealousy spike. That instead of money, we'd have hot, steamy sex after completing a job together. June said bluntly with Naruto's blush growing, while Ty Lee's and Mai's eyes widened in shock at what she just said, as Azula's face turned red in anger and embarrassment. You June, yo you really don't need to offer th thaw that, I see simply didn't want to lolly leave you to do have everything. Said Naruto, having believed June only made that offer as repayment for his help on the jobs they went on together. You're so sweet, Foxy. But I haven't made that offer to anyone but you. Besides, the more refusals I get from you, the more I want to just tie you up. June said shamelessly, making Ty Lee and Mai blush while looking at her in disbelief, while Azula growled at June. You will do no such thing, you harlot. He is a future prince of the Fire Nation and consort of the next Fire Lord. He will have no time to waste on such deviant behavior. Azula said, grabbing Naruto's arm and pulling him towards, with the bounty hunter's smirk growing. Oh lighten up princess, you can't get angry when Foxy has so many other girls and women wanting him, you saw how they were looking at him during training. Hell, or a girl there was practically drooling. I'd say get used to the idea of having competition. June said, with Ty Lee quickly looking away with a bright blush on her face, while Azula scowled. The princess of the Fire Nation does not share her fiancé, nor does she worry about things like competition. Not that I see any in you. Retorted Azula, June merely crossing her arms under her bust pushing it up. Sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear you over the sound of a little girl throwing a tantrum. Said June tauntingly, making the younger Ravenette growl at her. Come on, there's no need for you both to fight. I think you're both amazing comrades, so try to get along. Naruto said, getting between Azula and June before they could try fighting, before looking at the Fire Princess. Also, wouldn't you technically be Fire Lady rather than Fire Lord? Questioned Naruto to try and change the subject, with Azula scoffing and crossing her arms. Of course not, I will succeed my father and be named Fire Lord, as the title isn't exclusive to male rulers, unlike the title of Lord. Whether it's a man or a woman, they would be known as the Fire Lord, while their spouse would be given the title Lord or Lady. Azula said, looking forward to the day she's named Fire Lord, intending to be better than her father, grandfather and great-grandfather ever were. Learn something new every day. And I'm sure you'll be an amazing Fire Lord one day, Azula. Naruto said, smiling at his fiancée, who smirked proudly. I already knew that, but your praise is noted. At least I'll know I'll have a powerful general ruling by my side. And having you both there, as well, will help. Said Azula while looking at Naruto before turning to Ty Lee and Mai, wanting them to be with her once she takes the throne. Her words surprising both girls, before smiling. A small one in Mai's case, at seeing she really did want to start over and be real friends. The two also wishing to be there to help Azula whenever she needed them. Later. Eventually, Naruto had called an end to the training with the soldiers all going to the mess hall for lunch, with Haku, Iroh, Kurotsuchi, Pakura and Amer sitting at a table together. Before looking up when they saw Naruto approaching. None of them surprised at his appearance, having learned that Naruto tended to eat with the soldiers rather than in private like most commanding officers, seeing it as a chance to bond more with them. Something you needed, General? Pakura asked, with Naruto shaking his head as he sat down. No, I just wanted to see how you three were doing after Amashu. Naruto said while looking at Haku, Kurotsuchi and Iroh, who all shrugged. We're fine, still pissed at what those bastards did and that bastard Young for daring to call us traitors. When it was his actions that lead to the death of all those people, including the very king he swore to serve and tried saving. Kurotsuchi replied, having wished to melt them in lava for their execution, but knew it was more personal for Mai to be the one to do it. Yeah, the same with that water tribe girl, who seemed to think we were brainwashed or something. Haku said with a frown. She's probably from the southern water tribe, they definitely have a lot of reason to hate us. Iroh stated, with Haku nodding in agreement. Don't take it personally or hold it against her, the South Pole suffered more than most during this war, and they have plenty of reasons to not trust anyone from the Fire Nation. Naruto said before looking at Pakura and Amer. And I want to apologize for not bringing you both and the others with us. I didn't think things would turn out the way they did, if I had known well I probably would have brought none of you, so no one would have died. Added Naruto, knowing if he'd known what would happen he would have ensured everyone stayed on the ship so they wouldn't die. You know that wouldn't have worked. Even if you ordered us all to stay on the ship, we would have ignored the order and followed you anyway. The only difference is we all would have been there rather than just a few of us. Amer said while shaking her head. Agreed. You may be fine risking only your life, sir. But the rest of us aren't going to just stand by and do nothing if you're at risk. You know it, we know it, everyone else knows it, you're just too stubborn to accept help. Said Pakura, with the other girls nodding in agreement, knowing the High General tended to be rather reckless if it meant saving lives. Yes, unfortunately, I'm aware of how disobedient you all can be. Which makes me glad to have such loyalty from you all. Naruto said, smiling at the girls, which they returned before he got up and went to some of the other tables. With Tenten and Hanabi soon coming over to sit with the other female soldiers, looking at them before looking over at Naruto, who was now sitting and laughing with some of the guys. I don't get it. What exactly is the appeal with him? Tenten asked while looking at the other soldiers, having seen the way they all looked at the whiskered firebender, how everyone looked at him. Same. Sure, he's a powerful firebender, a high-ranking officer, seems to have a good personality, and is loyal to those that follow him. But what do you all see in him that makes you ready to die for him? Questioned Hanabi while looking around at the girls. Well, they've heard of Naruto and his accomplishments, after what happened with Admiral Zhao, it left a sour taste in the Yain archers' mouths at being under the command of any high-ranking officer. None of them liking the idea of just being used as regular soldiers when they were meant to remain unseen and take out high-profile targets and enemies. It's understandable, we've heard it all before by those that don't know the general. But he's done more than earn our loyalty, and we make sure to return it every day. Iroh said, with Tenten and Hanabi looking at her. How exactly did he recruit any of you to begin? 3 of you are waterbenders and you're an earthbender. She's at least a firebender, but what about the rest of you? Tenten asked while pointing to Iroh, Haku and Amer, then Kurotsuchi, and finally Pakura. The female soldiers all traded looks, smiling slightly as they remembered how and why they joined Naruto. The funny thing is, I was originally just a trainer for new recruits, despite being a skilled firebender, and more than capable of being promoted to a higher rank or joining the regular ground forces, I didn't. I honestly wasn't interested in leading my own team or forces, and I certainly wasn't going to serve under a commanding officer that only cared about results or sacrificing innocent people. Naruto had actually been one of the recruits I trained, and he got my attention with his different style of firebending and his attitude. Though I figured he'd end up being like the rest of the soldiers, simply following orders and not caring who gets hurt. But I kept an eye on him when he joined the Fire Army, watching more closely as he began rising through the ranks, and I learned about his unique methods. How he chose to try peaceful solutions rather than resorting to fighting, only doing so as a last resort when every other option failed. That's when I met him again and started getting to know Naruto, his beliefs, ideals and desire to end the war by uniting the 4 nations, rather than simply rule over them. At first I thought he was pretty naive for thinking like that, but I kept hearing more about his successes and victories and I started to believe in him. Then, when the time came and he was given the rank of general, I didn't hesitate to join him. Pakura said with a smile, happy to have found someone different from the rest of the Fire Army, someone who earned her loyalty through his actions, rather than status or power. I was actually born in the Fire Nation, my mother was a waterbender, and figured hiding in the Fire Nation would be the perfect place, hiding in plain sight among those hunting waterbenders. She married a native and eventually had me, and for a time we were happy until I awakened my bending. I showed it to my mother, but she forbid me from ever using it, scolding me for doing it. But my father had seen the whole thing and alerted the authorities about us, they came to take us away, and my mother she tried fighting them, only to be killed in front of me. I was nearly killed as well, but my bending saved me, reacting to my emotions, and I killed the firebenders and my father. Then I just ran as far as I could. I didn't leave the Fire Nation though, I moved to a new town on a different island and pretended to be a non-bender. I never wanted to use my bending again, especially for violence, but I also wanted to help people, so I trained as a healer using herbs and medicine, with some subtle use of my bending to better help and heal people. Then one day, Naruto showed up, having heard about a supposed miracle worker in my village and found me. He was even able to figure out I was a waterbender. But rather than try attack me, he only wanted to sit down and talk. I was wary at first and didn't trust him, even more so when he left. I was almost ready to pack up and run, but then he came back the next day, alone and again just wanted to talk. Eventually I opened up and started talking to him, even telling him about what happened to my family, and he comforted me, swearing he wouldn't tell anyone about my bending and continue visiting me. And he did, he visited whenever he could, telling me about the missions he's been on, venting about decisions he didn't agree with, while also helping me care for patients and gather supplies. Then he soon asked me to join him and I said yes. I learned how to fight with my bending from him, learning that my bending wasn't something to be feared, but embraced and controlled. Haku said with her own smile, saddened at talking about her past, but also happy at how much better it became after meeting Naruto. I'm not from the South Pole or the North Pole, I'm actually from a place called the Foggy Swamp. Part of a tribe of waterbenders that migrated there centuries ago, to the point where we didn't think there were other waterbenders. We had our own unique style of bending and are able to manipulate plants by bending the water inside them. We also protected our home from anyone that tries attacking, including the times the Fire Nation tried getting control of it and were repelled. I was among those that helped repel them. Until Naruto showed up one day to investigate the swamp and what was keeping the Fire Army out, only to end up getting lost. I found him wandering the swamp and almost got rid of him, only for me and my comrades to easily be dispatched by him. But rather than killing us or taking us a prisoner, he apologized and went on his way after treating our injuries. It was then that I realized he was different than the other firebenders that showed up. So, I started following him around the swamp, observing him until he learned something important. That's when he called me out, learning I was following him, and after some time together, he asked me to join him and I did. It helped that I always wanted to leave the swamp when I was older, to see the world and collect new flowers. Said Ino, smiling at remembering how Naruto learned the same lesson most of her tribe learned, that they were all connected, that they were part of the same tree. I was a traveling healer, having learned it from my parents, who learned it from my grandparents, who had left the Southern Water Tribe just before the Fire Nation launched their raids on it, feeling they could do more to help people than staying in the South Pole. They helped people regardless of where they came from, beliefs that they passed on to me before I went off on my own to help people. I had actually met Naruto when he needed a healer, after he and his men had been ambushed by some Earthbender rebels. I'd been in the area when I heard the end of the battle and went to help whoever was left, with Naruto being among them. He even saved my life when one Earthbender tried attacking me for helping the Firebenders, but Naruto took them out. After I was done healing everyone, he'd simply ask me to join him, and I agreed, wanting to repay him for saving my life. But even after I did that, I chose to stay after learning more about him and felt I could do more good by staying than leaving. Amer said, happy that she chose to stay. That just leaves me then. I'm from the colonies, my dad was an Earthbender, and my mom was a Firebender. Well, I was born an Earthbender and pretty stubborn one. Though I was technically a Fire Nation citizen, I honestly never really cared for the Fire Nation or their war, being more connected with my Earth Kingdom heritage, and I was never afraid to say it. Which definitely got me into a lot of trouble whenever I spoke out against the Fire Nation, until eventually I ended up running away to be free of it all and learn more about the Earth Kingdom. I traveled around and worked to train my bending, usually by taking part in underground earthbending tournaments, getting my ass kicked a lot until I started getting better and began kicking more ass than getting mine kicked. I was happy at being free and doing what I want, but I also missed my home and family. Eventually I decided to go back to see them and let them know I was fine, only I learned my home had been attacked by an Earth Kingdom resistant cell that were trying to liberate their stolen land. Completely disregarding how the people there lived happily there and came to coexist, which in turn led to them attacking the very people they were trying to free for their betrayal of the Earth Kingdom. Something which led to a lot of people died, including my parents. That's when I awakened my lava bending. I was angry as the love and pride I had for my Earth Kingdom upbringing turned to hatred. For taking my family away in a liberation mission for people that didn't even want to be saved, all to satisfy their own ego. So I started attacking the Earth Kingdom whenever I could, since there's not a lot anyone can do against waves of lava coming down on you. I didn't care who I hurt, only caring that they felt the same pain I did. My actions eventually got the attention of the Earth Kingdom army and their allies, leading to them orchestrating an ambush to kill me, and they nearly did. Until Naruto showed up. This was back when he was just a Fire Army soldier, with him having been on a scouting mission at the time, and started helping me. We managed to take them all down before he took me in and helped me recover, with him even standing up to his superior officers and offered to take full responsibility for me. Eventually, we got to know each other, with him even helping to restore my shattered faith in my Earth Kingdom heritage. But at the same time, I no longer held it on the same pedestal that I once did. Before long, I was back on my feet and he didn't even need to ask me to join. I just wanted to stay by his side, eventually becoming one of the very first soldiers to serve under him once he was promoted to a captain, colonel, and then later a high general," said Kurotsuchi with a smirk, having not regretted joining Naruto and found it's been the best time of her life. While Tenten and Hanabi looked at them all in shock and disbelief at learning how Naruto met them and earned their loyalty, but also how he helped them. Before they looked back at the high general in intrigue, part of them starting to understand how he could inspire such loyalty if he's bonded with all those under him in such a way. "Okay, and you all like him?" Hanabi asked while turning back to the female soldiers, who all immediately nodded without hesitation. "Oh yeah," Pakura replied. "It's hard not to like him," said Haku. "Who wouldn't after getting to know him?" Amer asked. "Absolutely," Iroh replied. "You did see his body, right?" said Kurotsuchi. The girls all looked at the lavabender, who was grinning shamelessly at remembering the high general taking off most of his clothes. "Don't give me those looks, you all were looking and fantasizing as much as I was," Kurotsuchi stated, making Pakura, Haku, Amer, and Iroh look away with blushes on their faces. But the female archers looking at them before turning to each other and shaking their heads, but would admit that working under Naruto may not be as bad as that brief time Zhao took control over the Yain archers. Meanwhile, Naruto soon left the mess hall, with it not going unnoticed with how all the female soldiers watched him leave. To the annoyance of several other male soldiers, with some being more annoyed than others. "I may be loyal to the guy, but sometimes I just want to beat him into the ground. I mean, come on. How are the rest of us supposed to get any girls when he's hugging them all?" said Kiba in annoyance at how Naruto's able to get girls' attention without even trying, before looking around at Shikamaru, Chimjai, Chiko, and Shisui. "Come on, aren't the rest of you upset he's already engaged to the princess of the Fire Nation, has that hot bounty hunter ready to jump him at any moment, now he's got the princess's friends to spend time with. That's counting every other girl on this damn ship," Kiba said, throwing his hands up in annoyance and envy. "Give it a rest, Kiba. Honestly, I don't know why you're so caught up with this, having that many girls chasing after you, that just sounds like a giant headache to me. Besides, I got enough problems without a bunch of troublesome girls after me," said Shikamaru while resting his head on the table, with Chimjai nodding in agreement while eating his large pile of food. "Shikamaru's right, I don't really see what the big deal is either," Chimjai said, not caring either about how many girls like the high general. "Of course you two wouldn't care. You're a lazy bastard and you'd only care about a girl if she was making you food," said Kiba before looking at Shisui and Chiko. "Before you say anything, keep in mind that I already have a girlfriend back home and I am perfectly content with just one girl. Besides, saying that every girl on the ship is interested in him is kind of an overstatement, Shiho and Tamaki are two good examples of that," Shisui said, satisfied with only having one girlfriend, though knew he had his own share of admirers, while also giving Kiba some words of assurance. "I don't have much interest in pursuing such a relationship," Chiko stated, having never been interested in a relationship, being fine with just following Naruto's orders and enjoying spending time in nature with the animals when he could. But the tracker only able to look at them in disbelief before slamming his head down on the table, groaning at how nonchalant they were. With Shisui having essentially killed any other arguments and comments that he could make on the matter. Later. After lunch had ended, Naruto had returned to the top deck with Azula, Mai and Ty Lee to continue their training, while allowing everyone else the rest of the day off. Though not long into the training, Naruto, Mai and Ty Lee stopped when they heard Azula gasp loudly, making them look at her. Only to see the fire princess looking at her hands in shock and horror before she threw her fist out, with nothing happening. "Azula," Naruto said in concern as they went up to her, with Azula desperately throwing her fists out and kicking her legs, only for nothing to happen. "It's gone, it's 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 gone," Azula muttered repeatedly in horror as she began shaking. "What's gone?" Ty Lee asked while looking at the Ravenet in worry. "My firebending," screamed Azula, making Ty Lee jump at her sudden shout. "It's gone. My firebending is gone. I can't even make smoke anymore. It's gone," Azula yelled before falling to her knees while breathing heavily. I think I'm going into shock. What is happening? Why is it gone?" said Azula, feeling like her entire body is falling apart and shutting down. "Hey," Mai said, kneeling down and putting her hands on Azula's shoulder. "Hey, Azula, look at me, alright. Close your eyes and just breathe, slowly. In and out, just relax and breathe," said Mai while taking a few deep breaths herself, with Azula still shaking before Ty Lee knelt down and hugged her. "Everything's alright, Azula, everything's fine. We're here for you, you're safe," Ty Lee assured gently, while the fire princess slowly closed her eyes and began breathing deeply and slowly, like Mai instructed. It's still gone, my fire, it's gone, Azula said, feeling tears in her eyes that her firebending was really gone now, not just weakened or fading, but entirely gone. It's gone, but not entirely. It's just gone out for the moment. Naruto said, crouching down and grabbed Azula's hand, making her look at him. What do you mean? Questioned Azula, desperate and hopeful he could help her regain her bending. Your firebending is still inside you, but it's gone out. Fire needs something to keep it going, it needs a drive. The same is true for firebenders, we need a drive, something to keep us motivated and pushing forward, otherwise if we don't have a drive, then our inner fire will go out. Explained Naruto, having learned this during his training. So I lost my motivation. But what was it? How do I get it back? Azula said desperately, before Naruto wrapped an arm around her. That's something you need to figure out yourself, Azula. Just like you'll need to find something to reawaken your inner fire. But that doesn't mean you're helpless or alone right now, we're here to help you with anything you need. Naruto said, with Ty Lee and Mai nodding in agreement. Yeah. I'm already teaching you Kai blocking, I can also help you improve your acrobatics as well. You were already amazing when we were kids, and I'm sure you've gotten even better, but that doesn't mean you still can't keep improving. And I'll help you do it. Ty Lee said while smiling at her friend. And I can also help you learn to use knives and other throwing weapons. I mean, if I can learn to use them out of boredom, then you shouldn't have any problem mastering them in a few days. Added Mai, with Azula looking at her friends before turning to Naruto. And you? What could you teach me? Questioned Azula, wondering what Naruto would be able to help her learn. I can teach you to use a weapon, I think a guandao would be good for you, a collapsible one, so it'll be easier to carry around. Naruto replied, making the three look at him. You can use weapons? Mai asked, not expecting him to use weapons. Yeah, though my main weapon is my gunbai and kusarigama, I've learned to use other types of weapons as well to have a wider variety to use should the situation call for a different weapon. I've even managed to train under Master Piandao to use a sword when I was looking into non-bender combat. Said Naruto, much to their shock to learn he trained under Piandao, especially Azula, who was shocked and intrigued. You trained under Piandao? How? Azula asked since outside of her brother, she knew that Piandao has never taken another student, at least to her knowledge as she's now learned. I did, and I just knew there was so much I didn't know and wanted to learn. I didn't demand, brag, or believe I deserved to be trained by him. I didn't know anything about how to use a sword and fully expected him to refuse to train me, but he did and I learned everything I could from him, even crafting my own sword. Unfortunately, I lost it during a battle not long before I was reassigned to accompany you, so I've also been gathering materials to forge a new one. Since one of his lessons was that a sword must be an extension of oneself and that by forging my own, it helps create a deeper connection with the blade. Naruto replied, much to Azula's shock and intrigue before she managed to stand up. Can we get started on training now? Azula asked, not wanting to feel helpless without her bending and hoped to start training immediately. With Naruto, Ty Lee, and Mai nodding in agreement as the latter two began training Azula, while the High General left to get her collapsible guandao. Later. Come on, work with me, TomTom. Mai said as she held her brother and rocked him gently, trying to get him to go to sleep, only for TomTom to keep being fussy. The knife thrower having been trying to get him to go to sleep for an hour now after finishing her training with Azula, glad they were able to help her and keep her from breaking down over losing her firebending. But now she's focused on trying to get TomTom to go to sleep, which was proving harder than she thought. How did they even do this? Thought Mai, wondering how their parents managed to get TomTom to behave, most of the time anyway. Before she heard a knock at the door, making her sigh and go over to it, opening it to see Naruto standing outside her room. Did you need something? Mai asked while rocking TomTom in her other arm, making Naruto look at them with a raised brow. It can wait, did you want some help? Naruto said upon seeing she was starting to look tired. If you can, please. Replied Mai, willing to accept any help if it'd get her brother to go to sleep. Nodding, Naruto stepped into Mai's room, smiling down at TomTom, who cooed and reached for the whiskered firebender. Hey little guy, you remember me? Then I bet you remember this. Naruto said before creating 3 small flames that began spinning slowly over TomTom, much to his amazement as he looked at the flames. Seeing this, Mai began rocking TomTom and humming lowly, having heard her mother do that a few times to get him to relax. While Naruto slowly began dimming the flames until they were fully extinguished, with the ravinet being relieved as her brother's eyes slowly drifted closed. Waiting a few moments to make sure he was fully asleep, Mai sighed in relief at seeing he was and put him down in his crib. Thank you. Mai said quietly, relieved he's finally asleep, with Naruto nodding in response. No problem, I'm glad I could help. Replied Naruto. Not just for that, but yesterday when you and Azula found him. I was ready to tear this entire ship apart to find him, but you both did and must have done more with how happy he was with both of you. So, thank you for that as well," said Mai, having been happy and relieved they found her brother. "That was all Azula actually, I only helped keep him calm, but don't tell her said that she's good with children," Naruto said with a smirk, which Mai returned before sitting down on her bed. "I won't make any promises. Now, what did you need?" Mai asked, wanting to know why he came here, with Naruto sitting in a chair across from her. "It's been a few days and I just wanted to ask how are you feeling? And it's fine if you don't want to answer, but I wanted to see how you were doing, since I know it must not have been easy, what happened? I wouldn't really know, given I've been an orphan my entire life, but I'm sure it's not easy going through something like that," said Naruto, having wanted to check on Mai after her parents' deaths and see how she was doing. With Mai tensing at the question and crossing her arms, looking away from the High General towards her sleeping brother. It's been hard, we honestly never really saw eye to eye on a lot of things, with how they wanted me to behave, how I did act, and their focus on my dad's political career. But they were still my parents and despite it all I did care about them. I just wish I did a better job at showing it now," Mai said, feeling tears in her eyes before quickly wiping them away, before feeling Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. "I'm sure they knew, and despite how they may have wanted you to act and behave, it was likely out of love and concern for you. Maybe they just simply didn't know how to be parents and did what they believed would help you succeed like they did, while still doing what they could to give you the best life they could give you. And it seems like they still let you have your freedom if they were willing to let you keep practicing with your knives and even letting you keep so many weapons on you. So, I'm sure they knew you loved them and they loved you and your brother," Naruto said while smiling reassuringly at her as Mai felt a few tears escape her eyes, which she wiped away. Yeah, I'm sure they did. Thank you, I really needed to hear something like that," said Mai, feeling a little better, but doubted the pain and hurt would go away anytime soon. "I'm glad I could help. And you know, our hunt will soon be moving more inland, we could travel to Chin Village, which will be hosting their anti-Avatar Day festival in a few days," said Naruto, making the knife thrower look at him in confusion. "Anti-Avatar Day festival?" Mai asked, having never heard of any place celebrating a day like that. "It's only celebrated in Chin Village and is known as Avatar Day, held on the day Chin the Conqueror was killed by Avatar Kaioshin. It's basically the perfect day for anyone who hates the Avatar," Naruto explained. Though he didn't really care for it since he still respected the Avatar, even if he didn't care for certain reincarnations. But he's sure that Mai would enjoy celebrating Avatar Day, given her distaste for the Avatar now. Feeling it'd be a healthy way for her to channel those negative emotions. Sounds like my new favorite holiday," said Mai with a smirk and nodded, with Naruto nodding as well and stood up. "I'll have us start heading towards Chin Village and finding a place for us to dock," Naruto replied, with the Ravenet nodding in thanks. With the whiskered blonde exiting the room as Mai laid down, closing her eyes and soon drifting off to sleep. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.